Didim tells the story of Thales. Long, long ago, when the wheat was not separated from the chaff, the lumberjacks were in the orchard, and vine growers were in the mountains. The smart were in the inn, and the mad were celebrating. Brooks flowed backwards, and water buffaloes made homes on branches of walnut trees. Once there was, and twice there wasn't, and it was a disgrace not to listen to a fairy tale that was told. A pot can't be without a lid, and children can't be without a fairy tale. This being the case, it was still difficult to find a child to tell a story to. Some of the children were working their fingers to the bone, with the tablets and smartphones in their hands, and the others had a lot on their plate, since some had to memorize formulas from the mathematics books, and others were busy solving tests from the exam preparation books. Let us tell our tale, wishing that the children who take off after our fairy tale may, this time, step into the enchanting world of mathematics, science and philosophy in the city of Didim. Her mother looked at Idil, who was reading the mathematics book in her hand as if she was reading a very exciting novel, and smiled. Even though she liked the fact that her daughter enjoyed mathematics, she was upset for her daughter's childhood was so different from her own, spent at the bosom of nature and at one with the sea in Didim. She called out to Idil, "My daughter, why don't you leave that course book aside and go out and play with Didim a little? At home in Istanbul, you don't get out of the house at all. Why don't you enjoy the sea, the sun, lush green pine trees and spacious streets here?" With a resigned look on her face, Idil said, "Shh, we are in our homeland, that is to say, the homeland of Thales of Miletos. I want to be a mathematics genius like him, and then get A+ from all of my exams. I can't do this by piddling around. There are still so many formulas I need to memorize in this vacation." While Idil was having a conversation like that with her mother, her auntie Phyllis came in. "I know the solution to your problem," she said. "Come on, get ready, Idil. Don't stay at home. Let's make your mother happy and also introduce you to Thales. Let's journey into the life of your hero. We are going to Miletos." Idil leaped for joy. "Hey, great! Come on, let's go, auntie." Looking around her, Phyllis asked, "Where is Derin? Let's take her, Elif and Rüzgar with us too. If your friends are with us, our trip might be more fun." First, they passed through the pine forest, and then a while later, they went on their way to Miletos on the coastal road. Idil was excitedly telling Derin why she wanted to meet Thales this much. "Derin, did you know there is something called the Thales theorem in mathematics? A theorem invented by Thales is still valid today. And there are wonderful things he discovered about geometry. The diameter divides the circle into two equal halves. The base angles of an isosceles triangle are equal to one another." Idil's sister Derin said, "Shh, these are boring stuff. I give up on wanting to meet Thales. I thought he would be more fun." "Me too. I wish I continued watching cartoons at home," said Rüzgar. Elif was so busy with the tablet in her hand, she wasn't even hearing any of this conversation. Auntie Phyllis laughed. "Don't worry, children, you will not be bored. And I'm certain that you will love Thales as much as Idil does." She also added, "Before going to Miletos, let's take a break by the seaside. I know a very good ice cream joint on the way to Mavişehir right after you pass the Temple of Apollo." The children got off the car with joy. As they were eating their ice creams by the seaside, Auntie Phyllis received a call. Talking on the phone, she left the side of the children. Derin could not help but look at the seaman sitting at another table in a weird attire. Just at that moment, a ship berthed the shore. It was a very big and old ship which looked like it was coming from thousands of years ago. The seaman that disembarked the ship came up to the seaman Derin was looking at. "Did you meet them?" they asked. "We waited for you," responded the seaman at the table. All of a sudden, one of the seamen placed a chair right in the empty space between the tables and jumped over it. He greeted the children by taking off his weird-looking seaman's hat. "Hello, Idil, Didim, Rüzgar, and Elif. We are sailors. Hearing you wanted to meet Thales, we wanted to see you. We came to see you from thousands of years back." Another sailor came near the sailor on the chair. "We are a seafaring nation. Thales is also one of our family. Thanks to him, we learned how to navigate by the stars. When he advised us to find our way not by looking at the Great Bear, Ursa Major, but by looking at the Little Bear, Ursa Minor, we navigated the seas more easily." Wanting to be a seaman, Rüzgar was listening to what was being talked about without even blinking. In the meantime, one of the other seamen sitting at the table jumped up. As if on stage, he knelt on the floor and lifted the book in his hand high up in the air. "Here is the poetic book written on the nautical astronomy by our fellow townsman Thales. It accompanies us when we try to navigate our way in the open seas at night. Do not think that this is the only book we read enthusiastically. He has a poetic book on nature too. Unfortunately, you do not have it today. He is the first philosopher in the world." "Hey," said the kids all surprised. "Did you say the first philosopher in the world?" "May others tell you about that," said the seaman. "We are out of time. We have a long way to go to. We have ages to jump back to." Rüzgar clapped his hands happily. "Thankfully, you have the Book of Thales on nautical astronomy and the starry night sky of Didim, which will help you to find your way." The children said goodbye to the seamen coming from old ages. While they were still under the spell of this exciting meeting, their auntie Phyllis, who had finished her phone conversation, showed up beside them. When they were back on the road again, Didim couldn't stand it any longer and asked their auntie, "Auntie, was Thales the first philosopher in the world?" Their auntie Phyllis was very pleased with this question and gave them a long answer. "Yes, kids, Aristotle considers Thales to be the founder of nature philosophy and even physics. For Thales tried to find the answer to how did the universe come about, not through myths or supernatural events and heroes, but through philosophy and science. Was it because Miletus was a harbor city then? We can never know that. But he had found the answer in nature. He had said, the essence of life is water. That is why many philosophers consider Thales to be the founder of philosophy. As he is considered to be the father of mathematics, he is also considered to be the pioneer of philosophers." In the meantime, as their auntie went on to talk about Thales, they had seen Miletus, and they enthusiastically shouted all together, "Here we are, already at Miletus!" The children had blithely run to the garden of the Miletus Museum in great curiosity. Their auntie said, "While I check out if there is anyone who can guide us in the museum, you can take a stroll in the garden." When Elif said, "I wonder if the outside of this museum is this beautiful. How would it be like inside?" Didim said, "Auntie has done you a favor by getting you to leave your tablet in the car. Now you can look around you," and laughed. While the kids were joking around with one another, Idil saw two men that looked like the old philosophers from the old ages. They were having a heated conversation by showing each other the parchments in their hands. When they took notice of Idil, who was watching them like a hawk, they stopped their discussion. The one that was a little bit taller greeted Idil. "Oh, Idil, we were waiting for you," he said. Just as Idil was looking at them quizzically, wondering how did they know her name, the second philosopher said, "My name is Anaximander, and this is Anaximenes. I am the student of Thales, and Anaximenes is my student. We are from the school of Miletus." "Wow, how lucky you are," said Idil. "Who knows what good things you learned from Thales?" Anaximander said, "We taught other people what Thales had taught us. Mathematics is not to be confined to books. For students to memorize formulas they will soon forget, it is in life itself. Anaximenes went on. Do you know the mathematics and geometry theorems of Thales, which are used in almost every branch of science today, help measure distances that are too far away, and are used in many military fields? What was being talked about, and Anaximenes and Anaximander had drawn the attention of other children too. They had approached them and were curiously listening to what was being said. Anaximander went on. Thales liked studying the seasons, the day count of the year, and the phases of the moon. He predicted the solar eclipse, considered to be a supernatural event until then, when and where it would exactly occur for the first time in the world. When the sun eclipsed just as the place and the time Thales had said it would, and the whole world was cast into darkness mid-battle, the armies had deemed this to be divine intervention, and Thales had forestalled a war that would last for years between the Lydians and the Persians. So he contributed to the world peace, said Didim. Peace at home, peace in the world. Anaximander laughed loudly. You can say so, little girl, he said. If he had used these successful astronomical measurements for the fragrant olives of these places, Thales would have hit the jackpot, said Anaximenes. What do you mean he would have hit the jackpot? Asked Anaximander. I think you adapted to this century quite easily. The children laughed. Anaximenes had turned a deaf ear and continued to say, by foreseeing the increase in the harvest and making press machines, Thales proved that philosophers did not just deal with the abstract. He could have been very rich if he had used this know-how in the trade. But the first thing he taught us is that science's aim should not be making money, but to access information, and to use this information for all the universe and humanity. Seeing in the meantime the group of Egyptian philosophers and scientists who were approaching them with books, telescopes, measurement devices, and meters in hand, the philosopher said, We have come to the end of the time allotted to us. There are others who would like to tell you some other things. And bidding farewell, the philosophers departed. The children had run up to the Egyptians who were making measurements with the devices in their hands. This time they asked them, Did you also come here to tell us about Thales? Come, let us be introduced. We are really curious about your story. Yes, said the Egyptians. When Thales arrived in our lands to observe the flooding of the Nile, he calculated the flooding time of the river Nile. He continued to the Egyptian mathematics school. As a result of the observation he made during the day, he noticed that his own height and his shadow would be equal at a certain time within the day. He was the first person to calculate the height of the pyramids by making use of that. Another Egyptian went on. Then they didn't have any of the devices we have now. In the meantime, as the kids were daydreaming, listening to what was being said, Elif was asking herself, would there be others coming from other places? So many people talked about Thales. There were reports that he went to Mesopotamia, said the Egyptian scholar. Wherever science and scholastics were, Thales pursued it, I guess. We can't stop speaking highly of Thales, and this tale would go on and on. The children looked at one another with happiness, feeling lucky to live in these lands where they had gotten to know Thales. They were looking at one another as if to say, I think we understood what we are going to do from now on. 3 apples fell from the sky, one for the children who will be looking for traces of philosophy, science, mathematics, geography, and history in life itself going out in the streets after reading this tale, one for Didim's scientists and philosophers, and one for those who will be telling their tales to the children for ages to come.